Okay, what happens if, are we going to open and adjourn for 15 minutes?
I really don't want to. I'm hoping that we've got 5 minutes.
Okay.
Let me go and see
Can we
what
not
happened in
get someone to just live stream it on their phone and just hold it?
for the chair. I've just run the first script through him because he'd been away. This is my first time. Normally this would have been my second or third time, so he would have been a lot more confident. So I just need to let me find out. Otherwise, I might have to do that. You're right.
How you doing? All right.
Where have you been?
Very nice. You look very tanned. Yeah. Yeah, we'll catch up properly tomorrow. Thanks. What? No.
Ladies and gentlemen, will you please take your seats and then be upstanding for the Chair of Council, Councillor Winston Vaughan, the Mayor of Newham, Roxana Fiaz, and the Interim Chief Executive, Colin Ansell.
Please be seated. So sorry about the delay. It's about finding your glasses to see. Good evening. I would like to welcome all members, the Mayor and all guests to the Old Town Hall, Stratford, for the ordinary meeting of the Council. I would like to welcome the members of the public and press who are physically attending or watching on YouTube. The meeting is being filmed for broadcast on YouTube. The cameras are mainly focused on councillors and others making contributions. With regard to the meeting etiquette, at the previous two council meetings, unfortunately, we have had interruptions from the public gallery in attendance. I would like to take this opportunity to remind the public that to enable the council to conduct its business, if there are any interruptions at today's meeting, I will ask the individual or individuals to stop and give a warning. If this continues, I will ask security to remove the person or group from the council chamber and will adjourn the meeting. Members of council, please can I ask that you indicate when you wish to speak by raising your physical hand. If you are invited to speak, please use the microphones to the lectern in the middle of the floor, if one has been provided, or walk to the nearest microphone, stand on your left or right side, and to stand close to it when talking. Please do not use the microphone when speaking and do not approach the dais. Please can I ask members and officers to introduce themselves when speaking. I would like to ask that everyone turns their mobile phones to silent mode. We are not expecting a fire drill this evening, so if the alarm sounds, please remain calm and follow the instructions of the Town Hall staff. I now turn to item 1, apologies of absence. I have received apologies for absence for this evening's meeting from Councillor Charlene Pathway, Councillor Lewis Godfrey, Councillor Simon Rush, and Councillor Rita Chowder. Are there any other apologies of absence from councillors to be recorded? Yeah.
Sorry, no. She's going to Councillor Islam, please.
Microphone, please, for the speaker.
Thank you, Chair. We have further apologies coming. One of them is Councillor Calaran Corbin, Councillor Belgiga Guano. I'm not sure if we've called out Councillor Laguda and Councillor Susan Masters. We missed that. And I think I have Councillor Pushpa Makwan as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Are there any other apologies from the floor? Thank you very much. I am now moving to item 2, declarations of interest, page number 7 on your agenda. Are there any members wishing to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or any other interest they may have in any matter which is to be considered at this meeting? No? Thank you. Moving to item 3. Before I move to item 3, members please note that there are no minutes of the last meeting available for this meeting. These will be available at the next meeting. I am now moving to item 3, announcements by the chair. I would like to confirm some of the events I have attended as chair of the council. And I will start with, on the 30th of May, I attended London Government, hosted by the Lord Mayor of London at the Mansion House in the city. And the guest speaker at that event was Sadiq Khan, Mayor of London. I would also like to list that I attended the Jubilee event held here in this hall by the council for all the residents of the borough. I think they were on the 25th and 26th. Correct me, Charlene, if I'm incorrect. Sorry? 26th and 27th. Thank you very much. And I attended on both days. I'll have to tell you, I also had a dance with an elderly resident at that event. Most of you will know that our MP for Eastham, Stephen Timms, has been knighted, and I want to mention a few words about that here. And also, a couple of other members of the borough who was also given awards. It says here, Sir Stephen is a unique and remarkable champion for local people. Congratulations to Stephen, and thank him for all that he has continued to do for his constituency in Eastham. I think he's well deserving. Those who know Stephen, I think he's well deserving of that knighthood for the hard work that he's done for the residents of not only Eastham, but also all of Newham as well. Tremendously hard-working member of Parliament, and I support that recommendation. On behalf of Newham Council, I'd like to congratulate Julian Junera from Sheringham Nursery, Lorna Jackson from Maryland and Isaiah Primary School, and Tom Canning from Bowling Trust on the awards as part of Her Majesty the Queen's Birthdays Honours List 2022. Their contributions to the London Borough of Newham are remarkable, exceptional in raising the standards in the quality of education. We are truly grateful for their leadership and dedication in Newham's families. I'd also like to give a huge congratulations on behalf of the London Borough of Newham to someone we knew as dear friend and colleague. I've already mentioned that person. I won't go any further. So congratulations to all those who've been awarded in the Queen's Honours of her Jubilee year. Thank you very much indeed. Right, try a couple of additions to the events. Wednesday the 22nd of June is Windrush Day, making the arrival of the African Caribbean immigrants to the shores of Britain and honours the British Caribbean community. Councillors and residents are welcome to join the Windrush Day celebrations at Old Town Hall, Stratford on Saturday the 25th of June. We'd also like to mention Pride. We know that June is traditionally Pride Month, where members of the LGBTQ+ community and their allies celebrate their identities, accomplishment, and reflect on the struggle of equality. We wish all those celebrating a happy and joyful time. I now move to item 4, announcements by the Mayor, Roxana Fiaz. I invite Roxana Fiaz to address the Council to make any announcements. You have up to 10 minutes to do so, please.
Forgive me, Chair, I'm just putting my timer on. Okay, so good evening, colleagues, and I want to start by talking about the most urgent issue of the day. Is the sound working okay? Can you hear me all right?
No, just...
I'm getting quite a lot of feedback. Where's the sound engineer? Anyone? Right, can you hear me okay? Chair, if I may, can I start my 10 minutes from now?
Oh, by all means.
Thank you very much. Hang on. Good evening, colleagues, and thank you very much, Chair. I want to start by talking about the most urgent and pressing issue of the day, the cost of living crisis facing our families, all residents, and the Council as well. I want to let you know what the Council is doing to support our people through the most challenging of times facing them and us. This last week alone has seen yet more alarming economic trends and fears of recession. Latest figures revealed that the economy contracted by 0.3%, worse than projected, and latest figures on average pay levels found a real terms drop, the worst decline for over a decade. We all know the human stories behind these figures and that people in our borough are paying the price of the economic crisis. As a council, we remain on the front line and are doing all that we can to deliver the help that people need. So I wanted to update you all on the vital work the council's Al Noom service continues to provide. Officers report a distinct and alarming increase in residents coming to the service for desperately needed help, far, far more than compared to last year. Demand for support with energy costs has seen a 175% increase in residents accessing the Al Noom service in the first 5 months of this year, and a 100% increase in people seeking help for emergency food. In response, the service has adapted, refocused, and re-energised how support and advice is delivered. This has included delivering household support fund across 32,000 households for help with food, and energy bills and water essentials. The service has now a dedicated cost of living response team, and our debt and benefits team and employment rights hub are continuing to do respective work to help residents. As you would imagine, food security remains a huge issue, so I wanted to highlight the sterling work that the Newham Food Alliance continues to do, taking so-called surplus food, which would otherwise be wasted, using our own Newham vehicles to distribute this, working with partners and getting it to those who need it most. Some 35 tonnes of surplus food, plus 15 tonnes of food we source from within the borough, a total of 50 tonnes, is distributed through the network of the Newham Food Alliance every single week, including food banks, food clubs and food parcels, working with the community, voluntary and faith sectors. This equates to between £7 million to £8 million worth of food each week to our families in Newham, showing the scale of what we do, and all of us should be proud. I'm certainly proud that we are the #1 local authority in the country, as determined by the Fair Shares data in doing this. But we must also continue to be outraged and angry with the government for not doing enough and responding too late. That's why we will continue to make our voice loud in demanding that the government do more, and why I am announcing this evening the establishment of a cost of living crisis task force to further coordinate and deepen our work with our communities and to step up the campaigning efforts so that the challenges of our people are heard at the highest levels of government. We are also gearing up to deliver essential food and activity support over the coming summer holidays for our young people through our holiday activity and food programme. The scheme provides a healthy meal for children and physical activity and education on nutrition, with families deeply involved. This is available for all children eligible for the statutory benefits of free school meals, and it's all about getting support to those that need it. Colleagues, I also want to update you on the issue of Victoria Street and what happened and has happened since the last time I spoke to those residents who were here at the annual council meeting in May to protest. I have since had 2 further meetings with them, alongside one with council officers, where I provided a clear undertaking and direction to the council that by May next year, 2023, every family will have been moved out to alternative accommodation, and we will be stopping the placement of families with children living there from May. Over the coming months, officers will be diligently working through every individual case to understand the specific issues and concerns so that they are resolved. I repeat here what I said to them, which is that there will be no more families housed at Victoria Street. We have already started exploring all the potential options for the future use of the building itself, and this will be brought to a formal meeting of Cabinet in the next few months. Meeting with those residents again, I reassured them that the issues that they have raised will be resolved, and even Focus E15, the Housing Justice Campaign group, have thanked us for our efforts so far. Colleagues, I also want to brief you on the ongoing work to make real our vision of participatory democracy. I'm looking forward, I should say, to hearing from those residents who are with us this evening as part of our second standing citizen assembly on 15-minute neighbourhoods. I want to personally thank you for your involvement, your dedication and your participation and your ideas. It is a living example of how we are transforming our democracy locally, because our people-powered approach is not just about the governance or voting systems, it's about a root and branch change of the culture of our democracy locally. And by doing it here in Newham, we are hoping that we can change the culture of how democracy functions in this country. The universal right to vote is something precious and hard fought for, yet we know that for so many, they still feel disenfranchised, disengaged and alienated by politics. People power that we are pursuing here under my administration is about rebuilding trust. Through our community assemblies, we see meaningful spending power, £1.3 million since 2018, on key local projects that residents themselves determine. Residents are empowered to shape policy through our citizen and youth assemblies. Our co-design and co-production approach is delivering key infrastructure projects, and our mission for participatory democracy will be expanded over the coming months with a permanent youth assembly in aspects of health and well-being, and deepening the involvement of people with special educational needs, and increasing the money for community assemblies. So please do keep an eye out for this. I want to briefly touch also on the climate emergency and air quality issue that faces this council, which we will be discussing more about shortly when we look at our annual report and the work towards our carbon zero targets. We have begun to look at the first climate budget for this council, and through our climate emergency task force, we have had some interesting discussions with the City of Oslo local authority, who are pioneers on this issue. Getting to carbon zero will not be an easy task, but we will be transparent about those challenges as we have to work together to find solutions to get this done. And that's why we organised a range of events for Clean Air Day last Thursday, meeting a number of children, young people from our local schools, and highlighting our action to clean up the air in some of the most polluted parts of the country. And we continue our position which I announced at the annual. The social integration strategy has some useful insights, including on Newham's hate crime and volunteering strategies. Did any of you know that Newham's residents are far more likely to take part in formal volunteering than in other parts of the country? So plans are afoot to develop the brilliant power our residents bring. In tune with this, I want to assert our welcome to all the diverse nationalities who come to live and work here, particularly refugees and asylum seekers. I was heartened and relieved to see the compassion and humanity prevail when the European Court of Human Rights ruled to stop the appalling Rwandan deportation scheme. This racist, unethical, and unworkable government policy must end, and the government needs to stop wasting public money needed elsewhere. Finally, I want to advise Council about the order person, which we will be announcing tonight in terms of our award. For those of you that were in the previous, to make more transparent the freedom of the borough, the order person process, and also the civic award. And we embarked on a call for nominations across all of those categories. And tonight, I'm really proud and privileged to be able to announce that the order person recommendation for this year is a much loved and dear colleague, friend, and comrade of mine. I met Pat Holland when I first became a councillor in 2014, and he is sitting in the public gallery of tonight's full council love. As our order person for the London Borough of Newham, and I trust through you, Chair, all of full council will endorse the recommendation that former councillor Pat Holland, who's here with her family, Tony, her son, will approve the recommendation of order person for the London Borough of Newham. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a presentation taking place. Thank you very much indeed for that. Thank you. I am now moving to item 5, announcement by the Chief Executive. I've been informed that the Chief Executive has no announcements to make. So can I take this opportunity by going back on the agenda, and I would mention one item which I should have mentioned but forgotten to do so. And that is that Council want to congratulate Councillor Garfield on his recent marriage to his new wife. And we wish him extremely well and good fortune in the future. Councillor Garfield. Item 6. I am now moving to item 6, updates from Cabinet members. Any member of the Cabinet, Deputy Cabinet member or Commissioner who wishes to update Council will be allowed to speak for up to 3 minutes. There shall be no debate or questions allowed. Does any member of Cabinet, Deputy Cabinet member or Commissioner wish to speak? Councillor Wilson. Any more? I would repeat, Councillor Wilson, you have 3 minutes to speak.
I hope we're going to be quite flexible because we've got a double act here, and I think it's very important that we are seen as a double act, Chair. Yes, I'm Councillor Neil Wilson. It's my name on the report, but I'm handing over to my deputy. This is a very important issue of domestic abuse strategy. I'm pleased that Cabinet approved this on the 9th of June, and all I'm going to say is that it does asked for approval. The Cabinet gave approval for a 3-year domestic abuse strategy as set out in our Building a Fairer Newham manifesto. It's a public health, whole borough community approach to tackling domestic abuse, which takes a preventative approach to domestic abuse for individuals, families, friends, neighbours and the whole community. We've got a strategy and action plan. Obviously, they'll be under constant review, building on existing work taken place in the borough and formulated, and this is a crucial point before I hand over, in partnership with multiple organisations involving our systemic response to preventing domestic abuse and supporting survivors. And it's important that I stress that it's in partnership with survivors, residents and perpetrators through a trauma-informed consultation approach. And I'm now handing over to my Deputy Councillor Khan. Thank you.
Can I just raise a matter of interest?
Not at this time. Could you...
Chair, when Councillor Wilson stood here, if you publicly seen his back rather than his face, so maybe it might be better if you use this stage.
Well, the format, Councillor, is that the speaker speaks to the chair, okay, and not the audience, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Domestic abuse affects all communities, and women make half of the population. We are daughters, we are sisters, we are mothers, and we are grandmothers. Violence against us must stop. It is up to all of us to take responsibilities to stop violence against women and girls. The tragic cases of Sarah Everett, Julia James, Bieber Henry, Nicole Smallman, and Sabina Khatun touches all of us. For every high-profile cases, but there are sadly many more. And the pandemic has brought new challenges and presented sick perpetrators with new opportunities for more people, new challenges and presented sick perpetrators with new opportunities as more people stay at home and went online. We must honor these women and girls by doing more to prevent violence, support survivors, and pursue perpetrators.
Councillor Montaz, you have 30 seconds. I know it's important, but we are time limited to speeches. So if you don't mind, finish off.
Our residents deserve better, and this issue is a priority for us in Newham. Can I just say, this is an area of work that I'm very passionate about, and I will continue to work with this council to address, to make sure that violence against women and girls are addressed, and our 3-year plan, our strategy and action plan will be delivered. Chair, if I could just have 1 more minute, just to quickly
I'm going to be
talk
lenient.
about...
I'm going to be lenient here, but please do hurry up. Okay.
In the first year, we will be developing and implementing a response to domestic abuse, which is culturally competent and addresses intersectionality, equality, and equity, including cultural competencies and training all our staff across multi-agency partnership. We know women have lost faith in the police force, and we will work very closely with our police officers to ensure that they protect our women. We will develop a far better housing strategy to look at women, children who need better accommodation. And what we will do is we will employ an officer, specialist who can actually work with women and children, and we will develop a housing pathway for survivors of domestic abuse. We will continue to develop and look at and review women's safety plan to ensure that women in our borough feel safe in their home, in the street. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. I think that's a very important topic and something that we must be minded of. So I think the extra time was warranted for her to complete her speech. So thank you very much indeed. Are there any other members from Cabinet or commissioners who want to speak? Thank you very much. I now move to item number 7 on your agenda, overview and scrutiny work program and future commissionings. Councillor McAlmont, do you have any updates you wish to provide Council this evening? I call upon Councillor Anthony McAlmont as Chair of the Review and Scrutiny Committee. Do you have anything to say with regard to the broad governance scrutiny topics or overview and scrutiny? If so, you have up to 5 minutes, please. And do take care of the time, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be pleased to know that I've timed my report as not to incur the wrath of your gravel. Yeah. Since the last update I provided to full Council, the Review and Scrutiny Committee has held its first meeting for this municipal year. The membership of the Review and Scrutiny Committee has been agreed as the AGM, and we have begun to consider all the matters to allow us and the other Scrutiny Commission to effectively scrutinize the executive and partnership organizations. At our meeting last week, we agreed to reappoint the education representatives from the Church of England and the Roman Catholic Church to the committee, alongside the independent co-optees who will continue to aid the elected members in scrutinizing the matters that comes before us. The committee also agreed the membership for the following scrutiny commissions: Education, Children and Young People Scrutiny Commission, chaired by Councillor Booker; Health and Adult Social Care Scrutiny Commission, chaired by Councillor Masters; Regeneration, Housing and Environment Scrutiny Commission, chaired by Councillor Lee Parkway; and Crime and Antisocial Behavior Scrutiny Commission, chaired by myself. The committee also agreed to reconstitute the following task and finish committees: Budget Scrutiny Commission, the Scrutiny Commission looking at the relationship between black boys and the borough, removal of combustible cladding from residential properties. I will soon be working with officers to arrange for members to express their interest in sitting on these committees. The committee also agreed a number of items for its meeting in July, which includes inviting the mayor and the interim chief executive and the cabinet member for finance to our July meeting. A considerable amount of scrutiny activities will be undertaken in the next few weeks in respect of our work program. I look forward to updating you on these in the near future. Thank you, Chair.
Oh, thank you very much indeed. Does anyone else wish to speak on this item? I've just been informed that you had 10 minutes on this item.
No, thank you. The 10 minutes allocated for total posing questions and answers for questions and answers.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have 10 minutes to speak, he just had 5.
Right, okay. Yes, does any member wish to question the report from the member of the Scrutiny Committee? Thank you. Is that noted? Is the item noted? Thank you. I'm now moving to item 8, Citizens Assembly on 15-minute Neighbourhoods Report. This can be located on the Council papers at pages 11 to 74. Mayor Roxana Fiaz, you have 5 minutes to present the report. I understand that you'll be introducing members of the Citizens Assembly to give a presentation. Councillor Fiaz. Sorry, Mayor Fiaz.
I used to be a councillor once. So it's an ambition for all of you. Chair, may I just clarify? I know that you've advised that I've got 5 minutes to introduce this report. May I ask how much time is being allocated for the members of the Citizen Assembly to be able to convey to members of full council the deliberations that they went through and what they reached in terms of recommendations and conclusions.
Right. How many members would want to contribute?
We have 5 members of the Citizen Assembly with us, and we have 3 members that would like to come and speak. And if I maybe just take 1.5 minutes, is that okay?
Yeah, I think what we'll do, we'll give you 10 minutes on the whole subject. How's
Okay,
that? All
fine.
right?
How does that sound, everyone? Yeah? All right, cool. You know the 3 members who want to come and speak, would you kindly just come, is that okay?
The public speak.
Oh, right, the public microphone over there. Just get ready. Thank you very much, Chair, for your accommodation. So, colleagues, this is the second report of the deliberations of what is a pioneering programme that we're advancing here in Newham. The Citizen Assembly is the first ever standing permanent citizen assembly anywhere in the country, and this was something that full council endorsed in the first term, and it's all part of our people power agenda. As I mentioned in my introductory remarks in terms of the Mayor's announcement, we appreciate that there are some quite interesting debates around voting models and how we elect parliamentarians and the voting system as it applies to local government elections, and there's a motion that's going to be coming to full council tonight. But profoundly, we've got to change culture of politics in order to reverse the democratic deficit, because it's not about the voting system per se, it's about how do we galvanise, inspire and mobilise residents to take control and be part of shaping the future of their neighbourhoods. And I am absolutely proud to have been the Mayor that has led under my administration the People Power agenda here in Newham, which, as I said, has been pioneering. The Citizen Assembly comprises of a random selection of residents that make up a representative sample of our resident population here in Newham, and the process has been supported by the Democratic Society to ensure rigour and robustness in terms of its independence. And in this cycle of permanent Citizen Assembly debates, we've had a cross-section of our resident community engaging with the really important matter of 15 minutes neighbourhoods, which for many will come across as quite an obscure concept, and it's something that's being marshalled and enabled in terms of approaches to placemaking and visions for areas not only in this country but also across the continent. And it's about how do we respond in structural ways to the urgency that the climate emergency demands of us. And as many of you who are returning for this term will know, as we worked our way through the devastating impact of COVID-19, we developed our COVID-19 recovery and reorientation strategy towards a better Newham. And that, at its heart, was about, number one, placing the health, well-being and happiness of our residents as being the primary and principal measure of our economic success as a borough, but also the ways in which we can reshape our approaches to placemaking so that our residents are able to access all those core essentials, be it shopping, be it council services, within a 15-minute walk or cycle from where they live. And our residents involved in the standing permanent Citizen Assembly have been engaged in this really important agenda and have presented in this report tonight a series of recommendations that I am proud and privileged to be hearing this evening, and also in ensuring that all of you hear. And please take heed, listen deeply, listen intently, because this is exactly what our residents are asking of us as elected representatives as we engage in the motion later on about how we increase and widen participation of voters, of citizens in the democratic process. And the democratic process isn't just about voting, it's about the pathways that we open up. And the Citizen Assembly is a fundamentally important shift that we have embedded in this council after so many years of being too distant from our residents, for whom we are custodians and we are servants. So on that note, I welcome our members from the Citizen Assembly. Please do introduce yourselves and talk through various aspects of the recommendations. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Deborah. I live in East Ham. I'm originally from Liverpool, but I've actually been in London, in Newham, for 30 years, and yes, I still have my accent. I took part in this because my view is, don't moan about what's going on in your community, get involved in it. So I applied for this, and I'm happy to say I really enjoyed the experience and think we all got a lot out of it, so I hope you do too. I'd just like to tell you a little bit about the Assembly members' journey. So as you can see, we listened to 39 expert speakers, we listened to Newham citizen scientists, 80% of us took tours across Newham. We visited 5 neighbourhoods and it was visited 39 times. And if you can believe, we actually walked over 100 miles. I understand the report is with you. Each of us had 27 and a half hours of deliberation, although that also involved lots of other times with our micro groups and our own tours and private reading. As you can see, there's quite a few things that we looked at. We looked at 7 areas, and we're going to touch on them very briefly now. So one of the recommendations for housing was, due to the lack of affordable housing and adequate services, Newham Council should work with community groups and developers to ensure housing is affordable, energy efficient and inclusive, and that basic services respond to residents' needs. We did have lots of actions, but in summary, Newham Council needs to work with community groups and developers to ensure minimum standards are in place. Newham Council and private landlords need to ensure social housing and private lets meet decent home standards, and there should be more affordable and accessible housing. Local businesses and employment. Again, we summarised it. Our recommendation was Newham residents deserve a variety of thriving local businesses. New businesses in the borough need to be made aware of the range of resources and support available to help them. Newham should provide sustainable employment options and paid at least the real living wage rate. Again, we only had lots of actions, but in summary, more engagement with the community via events in local areas, with information that people can access to make them aware of what support is available to start a business or learn a new skill. Provide safe spaces where people feel able to go and find out what employment options are available to them. For example, the citizens' advice. And Newham to work with the third sector and community groups to facilitate relationships with larger businesses to offer training, apprenticeships and internships to our local schools and colleges. I would like to introduce you to my colleague, Daniel.
I'm Daniel, I'm from Kennan Town, and I'll talk to you about infrastructure, maintenance and cleanliness. Much of the infrastructure in Newham, space in Newham, are not being used or maintained or accessible to everyone. Newham Council should work in partnership with residents, businesses, developers and third sector to maintain, upkeep and improve existing facilities to create a vibrant 15-minute neighbourhood which are accessible to everyone. We've got lots of action points on this. I'll just touch on one. Newham Council to work with businesses and cycle groups, including mobility scooter groups, and residents to find sponsorship of bike rentals in Newham to make it more easy for people to use bikes in Newham, basically. Transport and connectivity. In Newham, to enable 15-minute neighbourhood, we need to improve transport and connectivity through public transport that connects the whole borough together. It's safe and friendly to use and involves the community, businesses, charities, developers and the council all together in a better partnership. Cleaner, unpolluted, safer streets for people to feel comfortable using to get to their desired destinations. Public transport and streets that take account of all people, including those on mobility scooters, older people and people with disabilities and young children. Again, lots of action points there, but again, just touch on one of them: to improve accessibility in stations, tubes and buses, e.g. through adding lifts and escalators, TfL and community working together. Fairness and inclusivity and accessibility. 15-minute neighbourhood, The 50-minute community must have fairness, accessibility and inclusivity at its heart. All groups must be considered and consulted at the planning stages so no one is accidentally overlooked. Newham is a borough proud of its diversity and we want it to be celebrated. Again, lots of action points there. Newham Council should make sure that all community groups and all abilities are considered and consulted when planning and designing community activities and involvement, prioritising events that are being community together. Thank you, and I'll pass on to Lisa.
Thank you, Daniel and Deborah. My name's Lisa, and I'm from Stratford. I'm going to cover two subjects. Safety one. Again, we had 5 key recommendations alongside actions to take. And because of time constraints, I'm just giving you a brief example, ranging from infrastructure to greater use of community assets. One thing that kept coming across was that people wanted a more diverse police force to represent the local communities who live in the borough, so the action was there to recruit more BAME officers in the borough. Young people, right. Young people had 5 key recommendations alongside actions to take, ranging from specific initiatives in schools, on knife crime, for example, to sports. Partnership working with all businesses in Newham Council to broaden work experiences leading to local job opportunities. People felt that if local people got trained in the jobs, they could stay in the borough, in the council, in social services, also in the voluntary sector. We need local people. They know the area, they know the needs. So we felt it really important that local people are trained in these jobs instead of keep bringing outsiders in from other areas. And why I got involved is because I hadn't been involved with the borough for years. I used to be the head of a TA and we had a community centre, and that kind of piqued me into this because, vision, this is why I was meant to come off me. I've done it the wrong way round, so I do apologise. But this main point is why I got involved, really. The Assembly hopes that Newham can achieve the vision of 15-minute neighbourhoods. It's hoped to renew the borough's sense of community and pride across all wards. There was also realism, but of this vision really achievable, citing finance, infrastructure, amongst others, as potential barriers. And this is why I got involved, because some wards already had these elements of 15-minute neighbourhoods, but over the last few years they've been eroded or vanished completely over the last few years. So some communities won't even have a baseline to start with anything at all. Now, I'm one of them communities. We fundraised £150,000 ourselves as residents under the Neighbourhood Renewal Funds in the late 90s, early 2000s. Our community centre was taken away to build 4 houses on. We're just residential streets. We have nothing. We have no shops because we're opposite a train line. So this is why I get involved. So people are very worried about that. Some areas have no baseline to start for the vision. Yes, and so that's why I got involved, really. And please, I just think some of what I've heard tonight and some of this, I worked in the borough between 98 and 2000 in community development and regeneration. We had the red light from central government. We was actually through the social enterprise zone. I don't know if any of you remember that back in the 2000s and the What If programme. We held citizens' juries, the first time ever in London, residents, that we got to do that. And we actually got the DWP to change things so people could access their money. People weren't getting evicted because of housing benefit mistakes in court, because it was happening 50 a week back then. So I just hope that places that were doing that 15 years ago, why was they disbanded in the first place? Well, the social enterprise was shut down because of funding, but the social regeneration unit, was the key of getting Newham all these sorts of things. It was the glue. So, thank you.
Thank you. The second report, Councillor James Asser. Three minutes, Councillor, if you don't mind.
Well, I'll try and be concise because the Mayor has introduced this very well, and what we've just heard from the Assembly members was very detailed and very informative. I think this has been an interesting process again for this Citizens' Assembly, and what you've heard is extremely important. The 50-minute neighbourhoods concept is a hugely important part of the Council's programme and our ambition for the borough. And as you've heard, it covers a whole range of areas right across every aspect of the work we undertake. It's something I take a particular interest in because clearly the portfolio I lead... Am I back? Oh, there you are, you see. They didn't want me to tell you that bit. The portfolio, my portfolio area in terms of transport and travel, it is clearly a hugely important part. And the work we've been doing over the last few years on low traffic neighbourhoods, healthy sort of streets, investing in parks and green spaces are a key and a part of that. But what you can also see is it's important in terms of safety and building a community and building a better place and better environment. And the recommendations we've had come out of this report, I think, link that in. I think the other advantage of the Citizens' Assembly is whilst there might be lots of things we know in there, lots of things we all know from our own work going around our wards, hearing it from the residents and getting their perspective is a hugely important part of that. And these recommendations are really important to making sure the work we're carrying out and the programmes we're pulling together fit their agenda. And I just have to say I've been extremely lucky to have been involved in both of the rounds of the Citizens' Assembly. It's nice to see them in person, not on Zoom. You're actual people, not just heads and shoulders, which is always exciting after the last 2 years. But they've been really enthusiastic, put huge amounts of time and energy into this, and I think that's reflected in the report, and we'll be really interested. I urge everyone to go through it in detail and pick those up, because I think this is a hugely important work we're doing that, given where we've come from the pandemic, in terms of building communities, we've seen how important that's going to be. With things like the cost of living crisis, that's going to be equally important. And building that traditional East London spirit again, and those local communities are something I think we can all work on together. So I commend the report, and I commend the hard work of those who've taken part in it as well.
I have two names of councillors who want to speak on this item. Councillor Joshua Garfield, do you want to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Am I allowed to hold the mic and move it around a bit? Is that allowed?
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Am I allowed to pick the mic up?
Well, I wouldn't do that if I were you.
No? Okay. I didn't want to talk to your backs, or you talk to my back, but never mind, never mind.
Yeah, it clearly states that you should not handle the microphone while speaking. Okay.
Absolutely, Chair. Thank you. And thank you for the warm wishes. I wasn't expecting it. It really touched me, so thank you. That presentation was fantastic, and I think the Mayor is absolutely right that the first and foremostly, when it comes to focusing on democracy, you've got to involve the people that actually have to live with the decisions that we make and the people for whom we serve. That's absolutely the crucial part of it. Sorry. What I loved about something that one of the presentees said, and Councillor Asser touched on, was restoring community pride to where you live. Now, for most of us, the reason why we stood for council, the reason why we're in this chamber, is because we're really, really proud of where we live. Or even for people like myself, where we're from. And many, many years ago, I'd say I'm from Stratford, somebody would go, oh, Stratford-upon-Avon, and I have to explain to them where Stratford was, and now I don't have to do that anymore. And I'm really, really proud that I'm from Stratford. I'm really, really proud about being where you're from. In order to be proud of it, you have to really want to live there. And where do people always really want to live? They want to live in places where they can access everything they need easily, efficiently, conveniently, and do so with their neighbours and with their community. And that is the crux, really, of what a 15-minute neighbourhood is all about. It's about getting to where you work, where you study, getting to your pharmacy, your GP, your tenants association meetings, getting to the town hall, wherever it is that you need to go to participate fully in your community. It should be the people who are there that are at the heart of it. Now, for many, many years, we have policy in this country, and actually internationally, that was driven by how easy it is to get a great big metal box somewhere. And that was our first and foremost consideration. It's how we get things like retail parks. And in a borough like Newham, where less than half of our population have access to a car, it makes no sense to prioritise that as the means by which we travel, because it excludes people from their neighbourhoods. And that is why I was really pleased
30 seconds to conclude, Councillor.
Lovely, Chair, thank you. Very pleased to see many of the recommendations in this report, particularly those on transport and travel. And we are adhering to them in Newham, and I'm really looking forward to all of these recommendations being seriously considered and hopefully fully implemented by the council. And thank you for making those recommendations, because living in a 15-minute neighbourhood is something we all want, and it's a commitment that we've all made. It's how we restore that sense of community pride. So wherever it is in Newham that you live, though I do think Stratford is the best place to be, I have to say. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I have one other councillor who indicated they want to speak, and that's Niraj Patel. Councillor Patel. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to register interest, actually, before I start, which is I'm a member of Dorset Community Gardens, which I'll be speaking about very shortly. I'm going to pick up the mic as well, because this is very difficult. Here we are. First and foremost, I am moved and encouraged by the comments that were made by the residents. Thank you so much, because like many of the residents that have just spoken, I stood to stand because I wanted to make a difference. And rather than whinging in the background and complaining to the nth degree, I chose to do something about it. And I think what you're doing is fantastic. You're getting involved in the community and making a real change, and I do commend the report and the recommendations that were made. I thought I'd mention Dorset Community Gardens. I recently got involved with Dorset Community Gardens. It's based in Green Street, in the Green Street neighbourhood. And a lot of the things that were just mentioned were actually something that have recently come to light. So actually working with local people in order to provide them with skills, and in this case, the application's recently gone through to work with people in order to upskill them regarding electronics. And this will be delivered by the people should the programme and should this particular idea be granted some funding. And I agree with the residents in that local people delivering local services is key and at the heart of many things that we do locally. I think we need to do more of it, and I look forward to working with the relevant community members, my fellow colleagues across the council, and the corporate services in order to actually deliver that. And as mentioned, to commend the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Does any member from the Green Party wish to make a contribution? Councillor Higgins.
Oh wow, this is really quite low, isn't it? Okay. Okay. Thank you, Chair. On behalf of the Green Group, I'd like to personally thank each and every member of the Citizens' Assembly that took part in producing this report and its recommendations. There really is a lot to like in this report, and Greens will be voting to support it today. It will come as no surprise as one of the councillors for Stratford Olympic Park that I'm a huge fan of 15-minute neighbourhoods. And Greens are big supporters of this concept and been calling for their implementation for years. It's been great to be able to experience the benefits of living in one, and my ward really is a fantastic case study for the 15-minute neighbourhood. There are just endless opportunities to fit more walking, wheeling, I think that's an important one that people forget, and cycling into each of our days. Greens are particularly delighted to see the almost universal support in the recommendations for a proposal that some call too controversial, which is a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit across the borough. Over 90% of participants in the Citizens' Assembly supported that, so I want to see that implemented as soon as possible. We're calling on the Council, the LDC and the Transport for London to work together on implementing this recommendation. There really can be no excuses at this point. We're also encouraged to see references to energy efficiency standards, and we hope that this is just the beginning of the street-by-street, house-by-house insulation retrofit revolution Greens have long been calling for, and you can look at the Lose model for some help on how to do that. We are just slightly concerned, though, by references to services being accessible within 15 minutes by public transport. There's nothing wrong with public transport, and for services like hospitals, this actually might be appropriate. But we can't rely on public transport to make our neighbourhoods qualify as 15-minute neighbourhoods. Until public transport is free, which I'll be dreaming for the rest of my life, you're asking people to spend money to access those services, and this is money that some people just can't afford right now. You're putting them at the mercy of service providers and budget holders who, as we're seeing with recent negotiations between TfL and the government, don't always have our best interests at heart. And it also just means, inevitably, some people are just going to use their cars for their journeys. To make 15-minute neighbourhoods a reality, we do need to encourage more cycling. We need universal bike lending across Newham. This patchwork of Brompton, Santander and Lime bikes we have now is making it impossible for residents to cycle from one part of their neighbourhood to another. We need increased bike parking across the borough and significantly more segregated cycle lanes. This is important for the safety of pedestrians who are being put at risk, increasing risk by delivery drivers on bikes and motorbikes who are being put under unfair pressure to decrease their delivery times, causing dangerous driving. Do we have to wait for a casualty before we see sufficient action on this? Where we don't have genuinely segregated cycle lanes, we need more enforcement of parking regulations to stop car parking in the way of cyclists. This is a fantastic report, and its recommendations are supported near universally, and we do call on the council right now to implement these recommendations in this report as soon as possible. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, the request for technical crew to adjust the microphone because it doesn't seem to be safe at the moment. Would you be able to do that now, please? Mayor Fiaz, you also have the right to reply to the report if you wish. And you have 3 minutes to speak on that.
Thank you very much. And if it's any consolation for the tall members of full council, I'm always hassled because I'm really short and I'm having to be on my toes, so I really feel your pain. Look, I've really welcomed the full range of contributions by members in response to the presentation of our residents on the 15-minute neighbourhood concept, and I, as previously stated, very much welcome the work that they've put into their considerations and the way in which they've really immersed themselves on this really important subject matter, which will fundamentally transform the way in which we live and shape Newham, the borough, as a place in the years and decades to come. I will be engaging with the members of Cabinet and the wider executive to construct a response. I'm meeting with members of the Assembly later this week to engage with them in more detail around some of the specific recommendations, and we'll be bringing a response to the report to full council and subsequently to to Cabinet and then subsequently to full council in the imminent future. I would, however, just convey a few points of clarification. So the Towards Building a Fairer Newham manifesto, which will be translated into the corporate plan, absolutely does set out the plans and pledge to expand the 20-mile-per-hour zones across all residential streets in this borough, and I'll be more than happy to point you to the exact page and paragraph, Councillor Higgins, so that you're alert. I also wanted to take issue with the points that you made around the heavy reliance that you're suggesting the administration is placing on the use of public transport within the 15-minute neighbourhood concept. That's a misreading and misinterpretation of actually what we have set out with the 15-minute concept. And again, I'll draw your attention and send you links to the Towards a Better Newham recovery and reorientation plan, which I've worked on diligently with some of the country's leading experts. And it's not a reliance on the public transport point. it is walking and cycling alongside public transport. So I'm pleased to be able to provide you an opportunity to clarify that. And that's an element of a conversation that I will be having with residents when I meet with them this week. And I just hope the differences in terms of partisan politics as being engendered can just be parked, because the important issue of ensuring that our borough is healthy for all of our residents, so they're not impacted by the damaging consequences of polluting toxic air, because several of our neighbourhoods breach the World Health Organization limits because of the particulates that kill people. We can rally around and behind to ensure that we build a fairer Newham and we bring to life the 15-minute neighbourhood that we had set out way back in July 2020. That was 2 years ago.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Higgins, you have a point to make, a personal point to make.
Apologies. I think the Mayor may have misunderstood me, or maybe I wasn't very clear. The report refers to 15-minute neighbourhoods by walking, cycling or public transport, and that's what I was referring to. I didn't refer to a matter of the administration's policy in any place, so I think those comments might have just been misplaced, Mayor.
Thank you very much. That's noted. We will now move to the vote. Can I ask you all to vote? All those in favour of the report, please show your hand. Thank you very much indeed. Those against? That is carried. Thank you very much indeed for your assistance in that. I am now moving to item 9, Climate Emergency Annual Report 2021 to 2022. Can be found page numbers 75 to 106 on your agenda pack. I call upon Councillor Whitworth to present the report. You have up to 5 minutes to present your report.
Like this? Yeah, I prefer, I want a hand for my paper, so if I could keep it fixed, that will be better for me. Well, the climate change report has been produced annually since the Council's declaration of a climate emergency in 2019, and in it are set out the Council's means of responding to this emergency. This report's important because the response to the climate emergency runs like a core through all the Council's activities, and all the parts of the authority, and indeed all the parts of the community, need to work together to protect life in the borough, and indeed contribute to protecting life on Earth. As well as playing our part in slowing down disastrous climate change, and hopefully setting a good example to other authorities, the Council's strategy, explained in the report, aims to improve residents' health and life expectancy and enhance their quality of life and well-being. This report is a signpost on the road towards achieving operational carbon zero by 2030 and net zero borough-wide emissions by 2045. The basic means of achieving these goals are by reducing emissions, conserving energy, and removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Dealing with the climate emergency forms an integral part of the Council's commitment to reducing inequalities in the borough's diverse population, some sections of which we know experience the greatest material deprivation and the poorest health. We know, for instance, that fossil fuel emissions contribute to the deaths of an estimated 100 people a year, and we have one of the highest levels of child asthma in the country. The report shows the interlinking of the Council's policies on reducing carbon dioxide emissions from transport and construction, of building and adapting more energy-efficient homes, and greening the borough to extract more carbon dioxide from the air, and crucially, of developing a more circular, fairer economy supported by data and technology, and underpinned by ecological principles. Of these measures, I'll briefly consider some of those related to air quality. Carbon dioxide emissions in Newham per capita came down by half between 2005 and 2019, but this process needs to be speeded up for our targets to be met. A quarter of these emissions came from domestic energy use, so the Council is pursuing a policy of retrofitting and insulating homes to make them more energy efficient. This has the crucial additional benefit at this time of reducing energy costs in a period of galloping inflation. Road transport accounts for 1/4 of carbon dioxide emissions in the borough and is the greatest contributor of nitrogen dioxide and small-sized particulate matter known as PM2.5, plus the second highest producer of the larger PM10 particles after construction, which is the greatest contributor. The Council therefore employs an array of policies aimed at both reducing emissions from motorised vehicles and reducing their use. These policies include a commitment to a further 1,000 electric vehicle charging points by 2026 and robust plans to electrify all its own fleet by 2030. To encourage active travel, the Council has committed to the installation of a further 500 six-bike cycle hangars by 2026, with plans to expand the cycle hire scheme and the cycle network. To improve areas of the urban environment, 6 experimental low-traffic neighbourhoods have been introduced, with 3 of them being made permanent. And to create cleaner air around schools, the Council has implemented 14 healthy school streets, with a further 11 at the planning stage. Research has shown there has already been an appreciable fall in nitrogen dioxide levels during school hours in these areas. The Council has installed diffusion tubes outside every school to register nitrogen dioxide, and under the Breathe London scheme, 3 monitors of particulate matter. Results have shown nitrogen dioxide levels to have fallen by 1/4 since 2019, and all but 2 schools have shown a reduction in carbon dioxide levels during the past year.
I have 30 seconds, John, to wrap
These
up.
results are encouraging, but only part of what is needed to achieve our climate emergency targets. I'll begin to conclude, given the time. The fight against climate change can't succeed without the cooperation of the borough's residents. And examples of this cooperation we've already seen tonight with the Citizens' Assembly's choice of climate emergency and 15-minute neighbourhoods as their first 2 topics of deliberation. And the community neighbourhood forums have chosen a number of ecological projects to fund through their participatory budget. Right, the endeavour to slow down climate change can't succeed without a cultural change in the way we live, and this demands modifying some of our cherished activities. The prize, though, will be a world and a borough fit for our children and their descendants to live healthy and happy lives, and the preservation of countries in the world threatened by submersion or desertification.
Could you end it there, please,
Right,
Councillor?
I therefore commend the Climate Emergency Annual Report and ask the Council to note it. Thank you.
Councillor Charters to second.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me
You have
okay?
3 minutes to speak. Do be careful with the
Sorry,
microphone.
Thank you, Chair. This report is a living testament to the cutting-edge work this administration is doing at the forefront of the climate and environmental agenda. And when we say climate emergency, we mean emergency. And can I just reiterate why? In the IPCC's AR6 report, it was stated it will now be hard to keep warming below 2 degrees beyond 2030. And that's why our goal is to achieve operational carbon zero by 2030 in the Council and by 2045 for the rest of the borough. As an administration, we're working to get stuff done to tackle the climate emergency. We're accelerating work on the green economy. Our 2 successful levelling up bids were awarded nearly £40 million, which is the highest award for any London borough. These bids were specifically designed to support and unleash the green economy here in Newham. And we've been keeping green businesses going, with over 3,000 receiving business rates relief. We've established the Royal Docks Enterprise Zone, the only one in London, as a beacon for innovative and green enterprise. On pensions investment, £500 million of the pension fund is invested in companies who are active in fighting climate change. And we're driving progress on sustainable housing. Popular, Newham's housing delivery company, will seek to achieve operational net zero carbon for all new builds by 2025. We're making progress on fuel poverty, with many residents benefiting from the Green Homes Grant Scheme, worth up to £10,000 to cover modifications to their homes. And to top this off, we're planting trees, thousands across the borough, and last year we were delighted to receive nearly £300,000 from the Forestry Commission to plant 400 trees and hedgerows. We're also setting a high bar for the sustainable use of food, and the food life cycle constitutes nearly 35% of all UK carbon emissions, and we're the largest local authority user of surplus food in Britain. Newham Foods Alliance's work last year has saved hundreds of thousands of tonnes of carbon. Across all of these areas and more, we're leading the charge to move to net zero. We're a leader in the local authority space on this, and we're getting stuff done on the climate emergency. I commend this report to full council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Keeling. I want to speak to the report. Please do so.
I applaud some of the initiatives that are in this report and how they spread borough-wide, as it is important we make enough social, economical and environmental changes to ensure we tackle the climate emergency, and that a lot of residents or communities are involved. The issues with this report is what it doesn't mention. I imagine it is because it's based on carbon emissions that are emitted based on activities that Newham residents engage in. The true elephant in the room here is the report skips over the airport in the borough, possibly because it isn't an airport that our residents use, but an express route for those in the city. This has a huge impact on the planet, and it harms local people's health through emissions and noise pollution. Does this report take into consideration and calculate the emissions from not just the airport, but also the planes that land there? It also at no point mentions the toxic tunnel being built in Silvertown, which will drive up pollution in the UK's most polluted borough, adding traffic to our roads, lowering the health of our children and vulnerable adults, and prioritising vehicles over the environment and public health. The largest category of emissions here is consumption of goods and services. They emit more than double the emissions than housing. However, the report ensures it leans heaviest on housing than the consumption of goods and services. The second is food and diet, in which half of is the consumption of meat and fish. In fact, it emits more emissions than the mains gas for our housing. The report even states itself that food accounts for 35% of all UK emissions. Moreover, meat-heavy diets provide almost twice as much CO2 as diets based primarily on plant-based food. This is the opening sentence of the paragraph for this section. However, the 3 programmes mentioned in the report are inadequate to lower consumption or change people's habits. In fact, I can't see at all how they would lower meat and fish consumption across the borough. My favourite part of this report must be the part about recycling, which I'm unsure if it's been put in there as a joke on the environment. It states we have only just rolled out recycling to all council-owned flats and council-owned homes and blocks. How is this possible, and why is there such a delay? It is 2022, and if we are going to make Newham carbon neutral by 2030 and carbon zero by 2045, following the declaration of a climate emergency in 2019, then we should be taking action quickly rather than slow and reluctantly. For this reason, us Greens cannot support this report and believe it is an inadequate response to the climate emergency.
Thank you very much. Could I remind members that we still have a long way to go on the agenda? And if contributors could make their reports as short as possible or their speeches as short as possible, it would help us get through all the business on the agenda. Can I now call on Mayor Roxana Fiaz to make her contribution?
Thank you very much, Chair and colleagues. I actually welcome this report because it's the third report that we have presented to full council since we made the climate emergency declaration back in April 2019, and I would invite the members from the minority group to read those reports diligently, and also, as with before, I'm more than happy to provide you links relating to statements that we've issued concerning the city airport and the concerns that we have raised, not just through our work around our climate emergency task force, but actually the substantive work that hard, dedicated council officers from our planning authority team have been engaged in terms of monitoring the impact of the city airport on the residents of our borough. I disagree with you, Councillor Keeling, with regards to the insufficiency of the circular economy and the related aspects in terms of food consumption. And if you would similarly read previous statements that we have made and I have made, you will be illuminated, and no doubt that that will satisfy your concerns. I'm troubled that again you will make a partisan point around the important and vital issue of climate emergency, because this is not something that you should be partisan about, and it's troubling and it's sad. And I would just encourage all members of the council to read the report before you and read it in conjunction with previous reports and the whole gamut of things that we've been doing across a whole host of council areas, including recycling in flats. And more than happy to provide a informative debrief as to the issues that we've had to contend with to get the council up to speed with climate emergency, because prior to 2019 very few councils actually had declared a climate emergency, and we should all be proud at the great strides we have made in the intervening short period. And it's a testament to the hard work of our council officers, previous commissioners for climate emergency and the current team, and also the commitment that we have to achieving net zero by 2045. Thank you very much, colleagues.
Thank you. I have a list of speakers who want to speak on this item, but I must remind you that we've limited the time. We have 30 minutes to complete all the business. So if you really don't want to speak on the motions, do indicate. And I can tell you who I have still want to speak on this motion is Councillor Brayshaw, Councillor Garfield, Councillor Dasgupta, Councillor John Gray. Do you all need to speak on the item?
No, he's saying no. Brayshaw's saying no.
Okay. Stephen Brayshaw? Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Garfield?
3 minutes.
3 minutes to speak on the item, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for bringing this report. It's obvious to most of us in this chamber that the climate emergency is the greatest threat facing not just our society but the planet. It is the reason why Councillor Dasgupta and I brought the motion to declare a climate emergency 3 years ago now. Before doing so, before this administration declaring climate emergency, we had not outlined those priorities, given that we're an organisation with thousands of members of staff responsible for statutory services across the borough, statutory services that our residents depend on, and that as an organisation that sets an example in a borough the size of Newham, those declarations mean something. And the commitments in the report, but also the outlined information about the progress that we have made is actually really very impressive. And I know that when myself, Councillor Paul, and the previous member, Councillor Assay, for the ward that Councillor Keeling now represents, were in place, we were really, really proud to be one of the greenest teams in the borough and one of the greenest boroughs in London in terms of the commitments that we were making to turn around a really, really tough set of priorities in a borough that has the needs and consumption that we do. Now, I don't know about everybody here, but I know that as a borough of between 300,000 and 400,000 people, and more so when everyone's at work, we can't be telling people what they can and can't eat. That's not somewhere that we have a level of power over. What we have to focus on in Newham, and actually in local authorities across London and the country, is where we do have influence and where we do have power. And that is why the recommendations, sorry, not recommendations, but why the commitments in the report and the detail makes it clear what it is that we as a local authority are doing, the businesses that we are investing in, the priorities that we are making clear for our suppliers, in our procurement process, in our statutory services, that every decision that we make, we put the climate emergency first and foremost. That is where we have influence and power. There is no point trying to get us as a local authority to impose rules on people where we have no power, or even to demand things of bodies that we have no influence over. We are lobbying the government, and we are informing and helping our residents live cleaner and live better, and we are putting our money where our mouth is. And for those reasons, I'm really, really pleased that Councillor Whitworth and Councillor Charters brought this report to Council tonight, because we can endorse it. And if there are areas where the councillors for Stratford Olympic Park would like us to go further,
30 seconds,
by all means,
please, Councillor.
By all means, they can come to the table and let us know, because there's probably far, far, far more that we agree on than don't when it comes to the environment. However, the comments made previously, I don't think, reflect the fact that we are all trying to achieve the very best for our borough and the very best for our residents.
Thank you. Councillor Sasha Dasgupta, do you want to speak? Thank you very much indeed. I can hear her. I can hear her. Thank you very much.
Thank you, comrades. Yes, 2 years ago we brought the climate emergency motion to the council. I feel it's even more important now that there's going to be another life in this world. And I'm really proud that while we still have a long way to go in terms of retrofitting our council homes and air quality, and a national, what I feel is really important in a national agenda of improving air quality and reducing carbon emissions. I'm really proud of the work that's gone on in Newham Council. It took 2 years to set out what we wanted to do with the climate emergency when the motion came to the council, but I think it was a very good example of working with local community groups like Fossil Fuel Newham, the Newham Woodcraft Folk, and other interested stakeholders to help co-design what they wanted to see. And I don't think we should see it as this is the final stage, but something that we're always developing. And I have confidence, every confidence in the administration to do that.
Thank you. Councillor John Gray.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor John Gray, West Ham Ward, speaking in favour of this report.
3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. But I would like to start off by sort of again thanking my colleague Councillor Whitworth, a fellow West Ham Ward councillor, for his excellent presentation report. Once a teacher, always a teacher. I think that's the best way to say it. I share the disappointment with our new colleagues about their sort of opposition to the report. And while I understand their job is to oppose, I think opposing for the sake of opposing isn't always really helpful in this. But it's their right to do it, so good luck, as they say. I'm going to concentrate on two parts of the report, which I've got a special interest. We've all got an interest in saving the planet from being burnt. But in particular, the housing and the green homes programme, I do think is going to make a really significant difference to Newham, not only from the climate change. I think 25% of all emissions come from homes, but most importantly in fighting fuel poverty and protecting our elders, disabled and other vulnerable people and young people from living in cold, damp, horrible homes. When I started off as a housing officer in the East End of London many years ago, the thing that did shock me was fuel poverty, about people, especially the elderly, sort of living in rooms in the midst of winter with a one-bar electric fire on, wearing clothes, and basically just waiting for death. So I'm really pleased that we're going to retrofit homes, we're going to have new efficient boilers, and we're going to tackle that. The second part, from our trade union side, of course, is the green economy. And again, it's really exciting stuff we see for the London Mayor's digital hub. Training people, we must be careful that we don't make the same mistakes that have been done in past times of rapid but important economic change, when working class communities were basically destroyed and left to rot. So we must make sure that the green revolution, that the new jobs are well paid, are skilled, and they're on good terms and conditions. So there's lots and lots of other good things in the report, which I will commend and let you all read at your leisure. But I'd like to thank the officers and also John and Luke for their work so far, and I look forward to getting bigger and better plans in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. I now move to the right of reply. Councillor Whitworth, do you want to reply to the... Thank you very much indeed.
Yes, thank you for all the members who have spoken in support of the report and considerably enriched the debate. I will say a little bit of, will also express a bit of disappointment to the member of the minority group who spoke, because I would have thought they would have, the minority group would accept the contents of the report, as they are strong green principles which they themselves advocate. Also surprised that the member raised the question of opposition to the Silvertown Tunnel, because their colleague was present at the Health Summit, where we put up a very robust opposition to the Silvertown Tunnel, with fine speeches by the Mayor and Councillor Shaban Mohammed. So I think our position there has been stated many times and is very clear. Some of the points that the minority group member raised, I would agree with, but they are, again, part of the cultural change. We do overconsume, we do waste too much, we do eat too much meat-based food, but this has to be done through, the change has to be done through education and gradual, and as one of our colleagues said, it can't be forced, can't be imposed on the population. So this is something I would agree with, but that has to change in the behaviour of everybody. And for this, we need to mobilise everybody in understanding the need to work against climate change and to slow it down for the benefit of everybody. I will conclude there, Chair.
Thank you. We will now move to the vote. All those in favour, please show your hand. Thank you. Those against? Any abstentions? Thank you very much. That is carried. Before I move to the next item on the agenda, we won't have enough time to conclude the business on the agenda as it stands at the moment. Therefore, can I ask suspension of standing orders, item 11, for further 30 minutes to conclude the business on the agenda? Can I have a proposal from the floor, please?
Chair, I can propose.
Yeah, thank you. Well, we do need a seconder as well, so. Mayor Fiaz propose. Do we have a seconder? Thank you very much indeed. That means that standing orders is suspended for further half an hour. Oh, yes, sorry. Those in favor of suspension of standing orders, thank you. Raise your hands, please. We're only going to see a few. Thank you very much indeed. Those against? I think that is carried. That means that we suspend standing orders for further 30 minutes from 9 o'clock to conclude the business on the agenda.
So it will conclude at 9:30, if you just want to confirm.
Yeah, have enough from 9 o'clock. Right, item 10, revised calendar meetings. This is down to me, I'm afraid. As chair of the council, I'm moving item 10, revised calendar of meetings for 2022 to 2023. I would like to take this opportunity to remind councillors at annual council last month, I informed council that a revised version of the calendar of meetings would be submitted to this meeting. This would include important key dates. The reason for the revised calendar set out in the report on the pages 101 to 206, and in particular set out in paragraph 3, page 101. Members will see a proposed table amendment to amend the recommendations insert which authorizes the monitoring officer up to date and make consequential amendments to the Constitution. I refer to the appendix at page 109, which sets out the dates of the calendar meetings. Is there a seconder to this motion? Thank you very much, Councillor Anna. Seconds.
I'd like to formally second this proposal.
Thank you very much indeed. I know that Councillor Higgins wants to speak on this item.
Yes, 3 minutes.
And you do have 3 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to first urge the Mayor to resist the urge to patronise when members disagree with her. I know it's been a long time since she's maybe heard disagreement in this room, but when members disagree with her, it's not necessarily because we haven't read what she has to say.
Just a minute, please. Just a minute. You're not here to be critical. Okay, you're going to speak to the motion. Do you have a question?
Sure. The Mayor made criticisms of Greens in previous speeches.
Yeah, just 1 minute, please. Give me 1 minute.
I've now been exposed to sexism by virtue of conveying my thoughts and perspectives on a really important debate, and I think that's really outrageous.
Sorry, and I've been subject to ageism.
Right. You see, I'm taking advice on this matter. I think you have to speak to the report, you know, not what your personal feelings might be. Okay,
Sure.
so just speak to the report.
Sure.
Okay.
To be honest, I'm a bit confused about why we're being asked to vote on this now. We approved a calendar of meetings less than 30 days ago. And the whole point of planning a calendar is so that people can make plans based on that plan. And going over the decision now means that people have to rework their plans for the next year that they'd made based on what had already been agreed. This report cuts the number of full council meetings in a year from 10 to 8. But our constitution requires one of those to be focused on the budget. It requires one of those to be focused on the ceremonial annual council meeting. And it requires 2 of those to be focused on thematic meetings where members of the public and councillors can't necessarily submit questions and motions on the things that they want to talk about. This proposal leaves us with just 4 general purpose full council meetings. And this cut that you're doing to full council meetings is coming entirely from the allocation of general purpose full council meetings. There's no proposal to cut one of the themed council meetings, for example. This cut leaves more than 3 months between November and February with no full council meeting. Between November of this year and June of next year, there'll be no general full council meetings. That's a period of more than 6 months with little to no accountability from the public or from their councillors. That's just completely unacceptable. During the election, each of us promised to work hard for our voters and promised to make their votes heard. Do we really want to go back to them and tell our residents that one of our first actions as councillors was to cut our opportunities to scrutinise the council's work, or their opportunity to ask questions? I've already been told the calendar we agreed last month was written before the election. What's changed since that calendar was written that would require us to revisit this now? The only thing I can think of is that the first time in 12 years there are opposition councillors on this council. This report gives no answers to how the themes for these thematic meetings will be picked. Unless councillors get to decide those themes, this looks like a plain attempt to sideline opposition councillors who will now only have 4 full council meetings to submit motions and questions on the topics we choose. Will councillors be given a final say over the themes of these thematic meetings? Will the Mayor consider reducing the number from 2 to 1 to share out the cut more equally? Will the Mayor commit right here and now to bringing this to Council to let councillors decide? Right, Greens are committed to working hard for our residents through motions and questions to full council. Greens will not rob residents of their chance to hold council to account through public questions on the topics they want to talk about. Greens will therefore be voting against this report, and we hope that the Labour group will join us in turning down this attempt to cut the power we have as councillors to hold this council to account.
Thank you. Does any other member wish to speak? Councillor Asa.
So I am happy to support the recommendation, and I think to answer some of the points, we at the moment have a lot of council meetings, some of which are quite close together, and has left us in a position where we don't have as much business to discuss as we could have done, which frankly has wasted some of our time because we've been here having meetings for the sake of meetings is not productive. Councillor Higgins raises the concern that he thinks we'll be unaccountable or not delivering for our residents. I think there's one thing, and I'll take into account, and new councillor, you learn as you go on. I was in this position 4 years ago, but council meetings are not the be-all and end-all of being a councillor. They are not the one place you get held accountable, as I'm sure you'll find out with your surgeries and your local campaigning. There are scrutiny meetings, there are committee meetings, there are ward meetings, there are meetings with your residents, there are community groups, there are other things you should be doing. If we think that the only place you are held accountable is in this chamber once every couple of months, we are reverting to back we were in the 1970s and missing out on all the things we've just heard about in terms of the Citizens' Assembly. You don't need to move a point of order to come up and tell me I've misunderstood what you said. I've understood it very clearly because you're making a partisan point on why you want to oppose this. And it's no good looking upset about it because this is how debate wants. I understand the point you're making, but I disagree with it. I think you're misunderstanding the role of council. I understand why you want lots of meetings, but I think what we've got here is a pragmatic solution that still gives us more council meetings than most councils in London, still gives us plenty of opportunities, but will also allow you lots more time to go and do the kind of campaigning I'm sure you are keen to do in your ward. So I support this, I recommend it, and I encourage everyone to vote for it.
Any other member wish to speak? I take that as a no. I will not give a right of reply, but will now move to the vote. Those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. Those against? Just 2 votes. That is carried. Thank you. Any abstentions, I will ask. Any abstentions? Thank you. I'm now moving to item 11, deputation. I can confirm I can inform the Chamber that there has been no request made to the Chief Executive for staging of a deputation under Rule 28, not 26, as in the agenda of Part 4.1 of the Constitution. So I will move on to the next item. I am now moving to item 12. Are there any petitions by any members? No, thank you.
Next, move on.
Moving to item 13, members inform the Chamber that there has been 4 questions received and accepted by the Chief Executive. There is a supplementary agenda that was published on the 16th of June 2022, and members will find hard copies have been tabled. There are spare copies for members of the public. There are 2 questions from Councillor Nate Higgins and 2 questions from Councillor Daniel Keeling. I call upon Councillor Nate Higgins to ask their first question.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to let members know that on the hard copy being handed out, there's a minor mistake where some of Danny's questions are assigned to me in the list of names. I'm sure that was just a drafting issue. But I'll ask the questions that I've submitted. Okay. In March, you announced, this is to Mayor Fears. In March, you announced a deal with Uber to fund the installation of 400 new electric vehicle charging points. When will the locations be announced? What is the timeline for installation? And will they be installed on the pavement or on the road?
Oh, sorry.
That's the question. Sorry, 1 minute, Chair. Madam, the Madam Mayor's got her hand up. Does she have a point of order or a point of explanation?
Right. Point of explanation.
Sorry, hold on, but you didn't speak on the item.
Right. I understand you did not speak on the item. Right. Where's the copy?
Sorry, just bear with me, Chair. Councillor Nate Higgins has asked a question. Madam Mayor wanted to speak, but she hasn't, and I asked her a point of explanation or a point of order. Because she hasn't, she said a point of personal explanation, but because she hasn't spoken on the item, she can't have a point of explanation. So we now need to move to the question being answered by Councillor James Hasser. Okay?
How could it be confirmed because he keeps on directing questions to me and he doesn't realise we operate under collective decision making. So he specified my name.
So are you going to respond to the question?
Well, no, because I have a cabinet member who deals with this.
So yeah, so he will respond in accordance. That's fine. So could you just ask Councillor James, call upon Councillor James Hasser to respond to the question?
Yeah. Okay. Do you mind going back to your seat, please? And I now call on Councillor James Hasser to reply to the question.
That's fine. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. So just note. Okay. So the Cabinet Lead Member has responded in writing, and that will be noted by the Council Chamber.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. To clarify the position, Councillor, the Cabinet Member has responded to your question. So that's
the procedure.
That's the procedure that we're following at the moment, okay? Right, thank you.
Right, so does he have a supplementary? You've got to then ask him, does he have a supplementary?
Do you have a supplementary question?
Question. Right.
Thank you.
Okay. We move on to his second question.
Now, I call upon Councillor Nate Higgins to ask the second question. Yeah.
Sorry, just bear with me. Can I address the chamber?
Yeah.
So, okay, thank you, Chair. So, in order to move on with council business, you can, as a member who asks a question, to say as tabled. and the response is as tabled, or you can go up to the microphone and read out your question. So the decision is yours whether you want to read out the question, or you could just say as tabled, as printed in the agenda. Okay, so there is a supplementary agenda, and okay, so that hence Chair asking you, is there a supplementary? You can either say yes or no, or you can ask your supplementary, and the Mayor and or Chief Exec and or Cabinet Lead Member will respond. Okay, so do you want to carry on with
Right, do you have supplementary? Okay.
So, for context, my question was referring to Article 4 directions and their impact on rent levels, both within the area covered by the directions and outside of that area. The answer to the question says that the purpose of these directions isn't to control rents, and I'm aware of that. My question was actually, is there unintended consequences of these Article 4 directions on rent levels, and what work has been done to check whether that's the case?
So does the Mayor or James or the Chief
No.
Exec want to respond? Yeah.
Okay.
This is meant to be helpful, and this may strictly be a point of clarification, but as my understanding of having sat in this chamber for the last 4 years, the councillor gets to ask a question, it gets printed, there is then a chance to ask a supplementary, but I think at this point, and given half the room is also new, going through their first full council, everyone is confused by that point. So that didn't sound like a supplementary on that question. I think everyone's probably confused at this point.
As I understand, Councillor, a response was already given to the member.
Yes, but but there seems to be confusion, because I thought then there's a supplementary, and the supplementary, doesn't that relate to the question in time?
Supplementary is to the substantive question that's been asked.
Yeah. Because I'm confused at this point, and I've been here for 4 years.
Can I now bring the Mayor in on this, please? Mayor Fiaz.
Supplementary is to the substantive question. Yeah.
And he has confirmed whether he has tabled it and satisfied the response, and then what his supplementary.
Right, okay.
That's where we're getting confused.
Right, okay. So, yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. So, his supplementary was to his second question, not his first question. So what we need to do is just clarify to the floor that the supplementary question that he had just asked.
Right, I have been informed that the question which the member has put was to the second question and not to the first one. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, sorry, thank you, Chair. I'm just going to clarify. So Councillor Higgins asked his first question, and Councillor James Asser tabled the response that's been published, and it's everyone before members. Procedurally, we then moved on to Councillor Higgins' second question. Just to clarify, and please correct me if I'm wrong, as I understand it, Councillor Nate Higgins, you tabled your question, and the response has been tabled. When you approached the mic, you was doing a supplementary to your second question. That is what I understand the procedure we have just followed. So it would be helpful when members ask questions, they make it clear that they are tabling their questions. The person responding needs to make it clear that it's as tabled, and then the supplementary is to the first or second of their question. Does that clarify matters for the chamber? Yep. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Are you happy with that explanation?
Yeah. So he needs a response to his supplementary.
Right. We now move to the response
To the supplementary.
to the supplementary question from the Mayor.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I'm going to be responding to the supplementary question, to the second question that a member of the minority group submitted as part of today's formal full council meeting. And that specifically pertains to Article 4 of planning policy in relation to whether or not that has been used to understand the potential implications or impact or influence it can have in rent controls. And as per the response tabled to the substantive question 2, I have set out in the opening paragraph that further details can be provided in written form at the subsequent full council meeting in July. And as similarly set out in, I think, the penultimate paragraph of the response, there is work underway with regards to the current local plan review of Newham local plan as it pertains to the refresh that is underway, and there's an evidence base that is currently being pulled together, and that could potentially help illuminate on issues to do with rent controls. But as the response to the substantive question 2 set out, Councillor Higgins is minded to submit his question to the current local planning authority, which is the LLDC, as it pertains to the planning framework and regime that is in operation in the ward that he represents. But the broader issues with regards to rent controls is something that we've been campaigning on over the past 4 years, and we will continue campaigning on. And as stated in my tabled response to the substantive question presented to full council, i.e. question 2 by the member, I'm more than happy to provide a fuller response if the original one, as tabled this evening, hasn't been sufficient. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, I want to clarify the next point in terms of questions. So, Councillor Dan Keeling, could you confirm if this question is stable, or do you wish to read out your question? Say again? As stable. Councillor Assa.
Do you want to? Yeah, but he's got to say it.
Yeah, Councillor Assa. Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Right. Is there a supplementary? Arts Councillor, he said as tabled.
Yes.
We've got to ask Councillor Danny Keeling.
Yeah.
Do they have a supplementary?
Right. Councillor Keeling, do you have a supplementary question? No. Thank you very much indeed.
So now you're here. Councillor Danny, do you have, so he's got to answer to.
He just said no.
Yes, but he has 2 questions. That was his first question. He's now on his second question, so read that bit there.
Okay. Right. Councillor Keeling, could you ask your second question, please? Right. Thank you. Can I call upon Councillor Assa to respond to the question? As stabled.
Councillor Daniel Keeling's question.
Say again?
Tabled.
As stabled, yes.
Okay. Is there a supplementary?
Right. Is there a supplementary question? No, thank you.
Now move on to the next item, which is the questions by the public.
Right, I'm now moving to item 14, questions by the public. These are set out in the agenda at pages 1 to 7. There are no member of the public attending to ask their questions. These questions and responses will be published in the minutes. That concludes this item, and I will now move to the next item, which is item 15, speeches from members. There have been no requests for speeches from members. I am now moving to item 16. This is set out in the agenda at page 129 to page 132. I call upon Councillor Nate Higgins to move the motion. You have 5 minutes to move the motion.
Thank you, Chair. Last month, each of us took part in local elections, which gave our residents the opportunity to shape the future of the borough we live in. Candidates from across the political spectrum had an opportunity to lay out their vision for Newham. Each of us dutifully knocked on doors, listened to what voters had to say, and delivered many leaflets. Whatever the disagreements in this room, we did this work because we all believe in democracy, the idea that the collective wisdom is greater than the sum of its parts. That together we can make a better, more inclusive decisions that work to protect our family and loved ones. The faith that whatever the result the ballot box produces, that our elected councillors will truly represent the great diversity of our borough, and that we'll be stronger for that. And despite incredible challenges facing Newham, and a level of competition between parties that is unprecedented in recent local elections, we saw historically low turnout at just 29%. We all need to look at our own campaigns in our own patches and ask ourselves why we failed to inspire residents to the ballot box. I don't know about you, but I'm not satisfied with a local democracy which fails to engage with over 70% of residents in our borough. Everywhere you turn in our politics, you hear people complaining that decisions are being made which they feel don't represent them, that they feel that their interests aren't being protected, that they feel that their voices are not being heard. You know what? They're right. How can a council representing barely less than 3 in 10 voters claim to represent people? Something has to change. And with turnout being low across the borough and having met a fair few of the great people in this room, I don't think candidate quality is totally to blame. We have a voting system in Newham which systematically failed to represent the wishes of residents. In one of the youngest boroughs in London, our young people are excluded from our democratic process. I don't want to have to tell another young person excited to finally see a politician on their doorstep that their government has decided that they don't get a vote, that their voice doesn't count, that their issues don't matter. Votes at 16 are in place in both Scotland and Wales, and it is beyond since time our young people in Newham were given the vote too. I won't go on about how many Green votes go unrepresented because you've all heard the arguments before, and I also don't think that's the main point. People don't care whether the Green Party or the Labour Party thinks the voting system is fair for their candidates. But residents do care if the voting system is fair for them. They do care if they feel their vote has meaning, that they can vote for whoever they choose and that will be represented in the result. Right now, voters do not have that genuine choice. When election after election, vast numbers of votes go with no representation at all, is it any wonder people choose just not to vote in the first place? Under proportional systems where younger people's voices are heard, turnout is routinely significantly higher than we saw in last month's elections. Almost 50% of Scottish voters turned out to vote last month. That's not enough, but it's almost 20 points higher than what we saw in Newham. I know the Labour Party has long been a champion for votes at 16. I was also encouraged to see 80% of delegates representing constituency Labour parties vote to support reform at conference last year. This motion was defeated by union delegates, but there has been a sea change in support for reform since. Now, Unison, Unite, UCU, Prospect, PCS and others all support reform. The vast majority of the Labour movement supports a fairer voter system. I know as part of the Labour campaign for electoral reform, Councillor Beckles and others have been fighting internally to help us reach this point. Thank you for your work. But last month's election saw unacceptable levels of abuse, and I promised I would do something about that. I genuinely believe first past the post, an electoral system which divides people and drives them to pick one of two sides, which defines people as in opposition to each other, contributes to this culture of intolerance. When turnout is so low, our elections are vulnerable to being influenced by those hateful tactics. This motion is a chance for Newham to fight for the change that would drive up engagement and drive out hate. Let's model this kind of cross-party, progressive collaboration Labour members and unions voted for when they backed proportional representation, and support our motion for fairer votes in Newham. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a seconder to the motion? Yeah, Councillor Keeling. An amendment to the motion has been received in line with Part 4 Council Procedural Rules, Paragraph 15, amendments to motions or recommendations in report. This has been tabled for you. To assist the Council business tonight, I will be applying the rules of debate under 17.4, which allow two or more motions to be discussed together. I now call upon Councillor Alan Griffith to move the amendment. You have 15 minutes to move. 5 minutes, or 5 minutes, sorry. We'll be all night. We'll be all night.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Higgins, for raising the subject at your second meeting, but far from being the second meeting where these subjects have been discussed by Newham Council. One of the reasons why this amendment is so extensive is that there's already stuff on social media presenting this as if it's new, and some of us are not going to be painted into a corner on these subjects. Since this council first went on record, there were people who weren't born when this council went on the record in favour of votes of 16 who've now had a 16th birthday. There are people who weren't born when this council went on record in favour of electoral reform who've had a 21st birthday and graduated from university. It is not new to Newham. And if anybody is putting stuff out in the media claiming that it is, they'll be getting a robust response. A polite one, but a robust one. This, of course, fits well with Newham's development of citizens' assemblies, of which we've heard so much, and the fact that our mayor has been invited and been a platform speaker for the Electoral Reform Society twice in the past year, on 23rd September 2019 and 23rd March 2022, which was quite recently, really. Right, turnout in Newham did indeed fall from 2018 to 2022. Turnout in Newham fell in a lot of London boroughs this year. It fell in Redbridge, except in those wards that changed sides. It fell in Barnet, except in those wards that changed sides. But there's a limit to how much Labour campaigners can do in Newham if most of the opposition doesn't even put out leaflets, never mind campaign. We all campaigned. I campaigned in 12 wards, which I think is more than Green and Conservative candidates did between them. Aren't they interested in competing with each other to come second? Right, and to move on to some of the details. There's an important difference between electing 3 or 4 candles by single transferable vote, as they do in Scotland, and 5, 6 or 7, as they do in Northern Ireland. To get elected in a 3-member ward in Scotland, you need a quarter of the vote plus 1. To get elected in a 7-member ward, as in Northern Ireland, you need an 1/8 of the vote plus 1. That's a very big difference. And thus, the methods of casting and counting those votes are not very different, but the size of the wards means that the results are very, very different. I have checked these points as recently as Saturday last week with the new Labour and Cooperative leader of South Lanarkshire Council, and by email with the former leader of Edinburgh City Council, who is also a former chair of the Electoral Reform Society. Some of us have been around on these subjects for a while. Okay, finally, to how do we take this forward? I don't think it's appropriate to ask the Chief Executive to write to the Minister. I also think it's not very likely, it's likely to be about as effective as writing to the predecessor of the Electoral Commission, as we did about proportional representation all those years ago. Taking it into the local government associations has got much more prospect of developing something that might work. The reform in Scotland actually went through very quickly under the Lab-Lib coalition arrangement that was the first government under devolution. So I'm very pleased to take up this debate to put on record once again Newham Council's commitment to votes at 16 and to proportional representation for councillors, as we've done all those years ago, and to commend the amendment to council. Thank you.
Councillor Anthony McColmont to second. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Chair, I'd like to second the amendments to the motion. Chair, some of us are persuaded by the arguments for proportional representation, and as such, the substantive motion is pushing at an open door. This is despite the careless and reckless use of data and misinformation by the minority group to support their motion. However, we're able to pick sense from what has been said to have serious debate on such an important issue. I do not agree that Council should, at this stage, direct the interim chief executive to write to Her Majesty government regarding PR. This will be highly improper for a responsible Labour Council. This is too important a discussion on electoral reform to play opportunist politics. Therefore, this Council should not write to Her Majesty government, but engage with the London Council and the Local Government Association to bring some rigor and well-considered view to the debate before approaching Her Majesty government on the issue. Chair, on the matter of voting at 16, I can remember in the early noughts I supported or sponsored a motion to give young people a vote. My conviction regarding this remains the same now as it did then. I'm persuaded because I work with young people and know that the vast majority of them are sensible in managing their affairs and can be trusted to make political choices that are in their interests. However, this should be aided via curriculum in secondary schools and colleges. When we consider that 16-year-olds can at present change their names by default, give consent to medical treatments, choose their doctor, claim benefit, join the army with parental consent, join a trade union, drink a beer, cider, wine in a restaurant, buy the national lottery or premium bonds, order their passport, drive a car with their disability allowance, have consensual sex, get married with parental consent, and yes, leave home without their parents' or carers' consent. And yet, they're not being given or able to vote at 16. I say, Chair, it's just a matter of time, and that time is fast approaching. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll not see you for that.
Who else is speaking? Does anyone else speaking? Right, you've got a councillor there. Right, you've got councillor at the back there.
Right. Councillor Dasgupta, do you want to speak? Okay.
So, after him, you're going to have to watch your time. So after him,
thank you very much, Chair, fellow councillors and members of the public watching the proceedings tonight. Where to begin? It gives me great pleasure, first of all, to support the amendment proposed by my comrade, Councillor Griffiths, today. Fair votes is a cornerstone of democracy, and what the original motion might want you to believe, that there is enough cross-party support for wanting a fairer democracy. Newham Council and the Labour Party has not been sitting idly in this debate. Let me remind everyone what Clause 4 of the aims and values of our party says. By the strength of our common endeavour, we achieve more than we achieve alone, so as to create for each of us the means to realise our true potential, and for all of us as a community in which power, wealth and opportunity are in the hands of the many. From its very beginnings, the Labour movement has realised that change needs to be achieved by winning votes, and in our endeavour to build a social democratic system, enshrine welfare reforms and workers' rights within it. As the minority group reminded us, in our last conference, rank and file members voted approvingly for some form of PR, and in recent days, our trade union movements from Unison to my own union, UCU, have backed a form of PR. This removes the need for tactical voting, differences between us and the Green Party. While some would say we fit within the scale of progressive politics, it is significant to note that the Labour Party's politics is rooted within class solidarity, which unfortunately is missing from some of these other parties. That is not to say, of course, that people shouldn't be allowed to vote for a party which might be less progressive than us. Voter apathy is a consequence of the Tory government failures, which has seen people lose faith in our democratic structures. And often, yes, young people are missing from that debate. Can I also reiterate something else that has been made before me? That changing the electoral system in itself is not going to change voter
Could you conclude your speech,
yes.
please?
What we need is for people to feel that their voices matter, that they can participate in decision-making, as we have seen in our community assemblies, we've seen in our time to talk sessions, we've seen in recent tenants and leaseholders forums. These are all the ways in which we are getting our people to participate in democracy. Moving back to the amendments, it is right to note that the motion put forward by Green Friends does not exist in vacuum. There has been significant work carried out by members in this chamber
Can
and
I
the
ask
party
you,
we
due to
represent
time, can I ask you to
in the
conclude
electoral reform.
your speech, please?
10 seconds, Chair.
Councillor.
Right. Yes, 10 seconds. So 10 seconds. I am about to say.
Right.
As a council, we don't have the power to enact the change that we are discussing today. And I think it is absolutely right, as the amendment has been put forward, that rather than us instructing about PR, that we take it to LGA, we take it to London councils to clarify the options and seek an agreement that goes with everyone. Thank you.
We are now approaching the end of the council meeting. And in order to proceed, I'm giving Councillor Higgins the right of reply, to which you have 3 minutes, and then we'll move to the vote. Time is running out on us, so be quick with your speech, please.
Thank you, Chair. Greens will be supporting the amendment in front of us here. When we put this motion forward in how it is written, I strived to be as welcoming and collaborative with the support from Labour colleagues, and I hope that that was reflected in my speech. I'm a little bit disappointed and frustrated with some of the ways that my remarks have been interpreted throughout this whole evening, and particularly in this, on this motion. Nothing that I have said has been sort of critical of the Labour's work on this so far. It hasn't implied that Newham hasn't done things in this area before. It's simply a response to the election that we have just had, and a recognition that that is a good opportunity to reiterate our support for change. And I'm open to what that reiteration of support for change looks like, which is, you know, why we're happy to support this amendment that changes what the response is. But I'm glad that we've had this conversation. I just think it's a shame that it's been oppositional in some of the comments that we've had, and I don't think that that was necessary or what was intended by putting this motion forward. I truly believe that a change to the electoral system will create a more collaborative, inclusive, and to be honest, nice politics. And I hoped that the conversation throughout this motion would have represented that change. And I don't think it quite did, and I don't think it quite lived up to some of the conversations that I've had with colleagues since getting elected about how well we can work together. Because, as other people have said, there is more that unites us than divides us. But Greens will be supporting this amendment and the motion, which would then be amended. And I look forward to this being the start and not the end of our work for change.
Thank you. We have now concluded the debate on this substantive motion and amendment. I will now move to the vote. The first vote is to agree to amendments on this substantive motion. Those in favour, please, just one minute. Okay, thank you. Yeah, those in favour, please show. Thank you very much indeed. And those against? Any abstentions? Thank you, that is carried. Right. As the amendment has been carried, the substantial motion falls. Okay.
You have to vote on the amendment.
Right. We will now vote on the amended version, not the substantive motion, the amended version. Are you all clear on that? Thank you very much indeed. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Thank you. Those against? Any abstentions? That is clearly carried. That is the amended version of the draft. I now move to item 17. Are there any appointments to announce by the whip?
Chair, there are no announcements for tonight.
Yes, there is. There is. I think there is. You have got an announcement. One minute. He has got an announcement.
Chair, I stand corrected. Actually, there is an announcement for the meeting. An open and transparent recruitment process has taken place. Recruitment process has taken place for a place for independent member of audit committee, and I'm pleased to announce that Jazz Sansoye has been recruited. This is a 2-year term of office with the opportunity to extend for a further 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you. I take it that's agreed. Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed. I now declare the meeting closed with 1.5 minutes to spare before the guillotine fell. Thank you all very much indeed.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. That was torturous. Sorry about all that. I told you, didn't I? Okay.